So I'm going to speak first, and then Madeleine's going to speak, and then I'm going to speak briefly again. But I'm really here just to top and tail what Madeleine's going to tell you, because Madeleine is a Buurtzorg nurse, has been for 5 years, and she is the one, I think, that can really tell you what it's like to work in an organisation that does exactly what it says it will do in terms of creating an organisational environment enabling you to exercise your freedom and responsibility in doing the job that you're trained for. Public World is a small social enterprise based here in London. We have worked over many years to support and to try and understand how to improve public service performance, also services outside the public sector, but particularly in the public service environment, just because that's what motivates us more, how to make changes in that environment through better staff and service user involvement. What got me started down that road actually is that about 20 years ago I wrote a book about privatization worldwide, and it was a critique looking at how marketizing and commercializing public services was being justified on the basis of their inefficiencies, but actually wasn't solving the problems and was creating many more. And it led me on to do research on how you improve service performance in ways that actually involve people who use services and people who work in them. And that's what I was doing for many years. But then in about 2010, and this was work that involved a lot of travel, then about 2010 I had to stop doing that because I became the principal carer for my mum. That's my mum there, holding my elder daughter Rose. And as the principal carer for my mum, I became very familiar with how the care at home services in London functioned. And what I found was that they were populated by underpaid, well, you all know this, underpaid, underappreciated workers, many of whom were doing the very best they could, but in systems that neither respected them properly, nor enabled them and gave them the resources they needed to do their jobs. And this was resulting in poor, low quality, as well as low productivity. And I started to think about, well, what have I learned over the last 20 years that could be applied to improving the home care environment? And when my mum died, she didn't have much money, but a little bit she did leave. I thought, well, I'm going to use that money to try and pump prime a way of improving home care services in Britain, and started to imagine the way I would want them to be. And during the period when my mum was being looked after, I used to speak, of course, to her care workers very often. And I remember there was one light bulb moment when I said to them, to one of the care workers, sometimes when things go wrong, as they often did, I try to get through to your office on the phone and I just can't get through, nobody answers the phone. And she just laughed. And she said, oh no, we never even bother trying to get through to our managers on the phone, nobody ever picks up. So I said, well, what do you do if you've got a problem, if you're running late or if you need some support? She said, we call each other. And it was a light bulb moment because I realized, what if we could actually systemize this approach of enabling people with real purpose in their work? And I think that is a fundamental, actually, of happy workplaces, is that you have a purpose in your work, and enabling them to escape the systems which are preventing them from being productive. Because one of the other things about these home care workers, of course, was that they were grotesquely low paid. This was at the time when the debate about 0 hours contracts and particularly about 15-minute care visits was happening. And in that debate, which I didn't have much time at the time to participate in, but one of the things that really occurred to me was actually whether a care worker visits for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 2 hours is actually not the issue. The issue is who's deciding how long that engagement needs to last for. Because my mum sometimes needed 5-minute care visit and didn't actually want any more. Other times she needed a couple of hours. But the care workers had absolutely no way of being able to decide week to week how to change the kind of care that was provided for in a co-creative relationship with my mum herself and with me. So after she died, I started looking into, well, is there any place that's doing this properly, the way I would imagine it? And of course, it wasn't long before I found Buurtzorg. And that's where I'm going to hand over to Madelon.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I really like to give you a little bit insight in how we work within Buurtzorg. And I now work for the company for a little bit more than 6 years, and and this is what you see behind me is what we call the onion model. It's just in a nutshell how Buurtzorg is working. Our CEO, Jos de Blok, thought of this idea together with 4 nurses. It's now 10 years ago. Last year we had our 10th anniversary. And this was his idea of a good way of home healthcare in the Netherlands, because there was this movement going on, a lot of fragmented care, and a lot of nurses, community nurses, really were not happy in their old workplaces in the other organizations. And they found within Buurtzorg a better way, in their opinion, to give better care to people. So this really shows the client is in the center, because that's our core business and that's the most important. And around, just the circle around it, is the informal network. And we think to keep the costs down, it's important to involve the informal network in the client situation. Because it's not a person with a wound, but it's not a wound, I'll say it wrong, it's a person with a wound who's living in an environment, in a community, in a village, so it's much more than just treating this wound. So we think it's very important to involve and create an informal network around the client. And then of course we have the Buurtzorg team. And then we have also a strong relation with the formal network in our community. And I want to start, this
little white one there, yeah.
This one. So I want to start explaining how we work by showing this picture of a very nice client of ours. She's 96, still living on her own in the community, with support from her neighbors and also from her son. And she can manage to live in her own apartment, and that's the movement that's going on in the Netherlands. They want you to stay as long as your own environment, as long as possible. And she's suffering from early stage of dementia, so she has a lot of issues. And she had support stockings because she has heart failure, and I won't go into details about her medical condition. This picture really shows when we start taking care of her, we do the assessment and we have this initial interview, and that's our starting point of the care. We have to find out who's around this client, and you can only find out by really connect to her and talk to her and find out who's around her. So we found out that she has a neighbor who is really concerned about, she's 96, living on her own, and she asked us, because we are there every day, how can we help her? How can we support her? And I said, oh wait, well, we can have a talk together with this lady and the neighbor. And at the end, we found out that this neighbor would come in every evening to pull off the support stocking. So we'd be there in the morning, and with some help from the informal network, there will be someone in the afternoon and the evening as well. So that's a way you try to find out, who's around this client. And we deliver holistic care, so it's not, in the other organization I used to work for several years, there was this fragmented care. So one should come in for an injection, and the other one would prepare a meal, and then the other one will help giving her a shower. And within Buurtzorg we think it's far more better for a lady or a client to have one person who will come in and will do the whole total package of care. So we're not thinking of an injection, or it's just a person who needs care. And within Buurtzorg you're a little bit forced by working in a holistic way. And in a team we are generalists, so all in our team are 10 people, 10 nurses, and we all can do the task that has to be done. And So we take care of this whole process. So before we take care of this lady, she had another home care organization. And it could happen that there were more than 30 or 40 caregivers in her house. Imagine what that would look like for a lady on her own, explaining every time again. She can't hear so very well, that's another obstacle with her. Imagine what that would mean every time in your house, explaining what you want, how you want to be treated. So, and now she found out just her one team of 10 nurses taking care of her. She says, I can see so many difference in a positive way. And also for us, because when we enter her house, we can see her bedroom is just close to the door. And most of the time her bed is really tidy, so then it's all right. But sometimes when you enter the room, or enter her house, then we see the bed is not made well and it's a little bit messy in her house. Then we have this, because we know her, okay, we have to pay attention because she might have something going on, or so we talk about it. And then sometimes we come extra this day to take care of her. So we're really flexible of taking care of her. And because you know her, you know her habits, you know how she's moving around, you can work far more preventative. And you can avoid for hospital admission or something else. So it's a benefit of the way we work. But also for a nurse, it gives you really time to get an engagement, a relationship with this lady. So that's, in the other organization there was no time. I was always in a rush. Go in, go out, and no time. Sometimes I was happy that they don't ask me any questions because I had no time to answer them. So it was a different way of working. And we tried to support the self-management, and we tried to find solutions together. We call it co-creating solutions. So for her, we have a lot of different aids available for her to put on support stockings or whatever medical aids. And in every situation we try to find out the best practical solutions. And sometimes it means you have to practice together, sometimes you have to get an OT involved or a physiotherapist. So it's all about finding solutions. It's not one solution for everyone, it's a tailor-made solution in this particular situation. And that was about the client, but also our team is very important. Buurtzorg is not about self-organization. It's our CEO, Jos de Blok, thought of how can we deliver the best care at home, and self-organization is the way to get it all organized. So it's not that different. It's like a household. You have tasks that has to be done. It's the same in a team. Task has to be done, and we divide the different tasks among our team members. And it was so, when I applied for this job, I saw an announcement in the window of the Buurtzorg office in my village. And just was just like a paper in the window and says, we're looking for a nurse, please dial this telephone number. I said, okay. So I dialed this number. I heard a little bit about Buurtzorg, and not that much. And I get my colleague on the phone. Oh, we're so happy you give us a phone call. Yeah, we're looking for a nurse, and please come by at the office and we can have a cup of coffee and then we talk about it. I said, okay, it was totally new for me. No management, no formal letters or no. I said, okay, I will meet you the next day, I thought. And we had this very nice conversation. She was talking about what they need in the team, and I was talking about what I was looking for. And at the end she said, yeah, I think we can offer you a job, but I first have to go back to my team and we talk about it and I give you a phone call. And I thought, oh, this is it. Okay, it was totally new for me. And then the day after she gave me a phone call and said, yeah, we want to invite you in our team. And we thought about it, and that's how I get started within Buurtzorg. And it's not about formal letters, or the informal structure is far more important. It's just trusting, and yeah, you feel trusted within the organization. And there is no hierarchy in our team. we have 2 levels. We have nurses and nurse assistants. But in our team, we're all equal. So when there's a decision to be made, together we decide within consensus about the decisions. So it's not a manager, because in Buurtzorg there are 0 managers. So there's not a management layer or manager says you have to do this or this has to be done. It's no, you decide it within your team. And of course it's not anarchy. We have this framework we have to work within. But in this framework you have the freedom to really customize it and tailor it to your own team. Because now we have more than 900 teams all over the Netherlands. And every team works in their own way. When a new team started, it's always from bottom up. It's district nurses thinking about, there might be in my area, there's a need. So then you give a phone call to our back office. And I said, yeah, I think I really want to start a Buurtzorg team here. Then you have a talk with Jos de Blok and talk about it and said, okay, I think it would work. And then the first few months, you have to find your way. You have to find your own office. You have to recruit your staff, and you also have to find your way in the community. Because the vision within Buurtzorg is it's a small team working in a community. So it's important that you know who are around you. So when you need access to a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist, you can easily access each other because you know each other already. And we have a 24/7 availability by phone. So there's always one of our nurses is available by phone. So there's not what Brandon was talking, when you dial this number, there's no answer, or you have a help desk or who doesn't know anything about it. So for our clients, it's really important because they know my nurse is only one phone call away. So it's a totally different way of approaching. And when this client gives us a phone call, we know who she is, where she lives, and you can easily, sometimes just by phone, answer her questions. So it's a total different approach of, in a formal structure. It's trusted and easy access. And the responsibility of decision making is within the team. We have coaches, because sometimes we have issues in our team. It's beyond our knowledge because we're nurses, we're not HR people, and you have to recruit your staff, but sometimes you also have to say goodbye to your staff. So that's the hardest part, because you have to speak up to your colleague to say, I don't think this is the place for you. So that's what I find the hardest part. To recruit people, it's always you're in your honeymoon state and you're happy. Oh yeah, please join the team. But there are also times when you have to say goodbye to your people. So that's and then it's where you can call for a coach. They will only give advice. So it's not that they take over or they say you have to do this. They can advise you on your issues. So that. And sometimes they give you an advice, but then as a team you think, I don't think that would work for our team. But it's okay. It's for the coach. It's important that it's a joint responsibility of the team. Otherwise, there will always be someone saying, yeah, but it wasn't my decision. You choose. But so it's important because the team spirit is. I think that's what it's all about. It's not just 10 nurses working together. No, it's a team working together. So I think that's make the difference than in the other organization I work for. And in a team you feel trusted. Our CEO always says, I trust my nurses that they find the right solutions. And when you make a mistake, okay, you won't make it again. I'm not pointing at medical mistakes, but in your team, sometimes you make a decision and after a while you think, we should have done it different. But that's not a problem. You can really easy find another solution. I'm just looking shortly on my list.
You've covered this.
Yeah, and I think We have a back office. It's in the eastern part of the Netherlands. We always call it Almelo because that's the city where it's founded. And there are only 50 staff at this back office. Imagine 10,000 nurses working all around the Netherlands, and there are only 50 people in our back office. And they're always, as I say, as a team, they're also only one phone call away, because if you want to work in a self-organizing team, you have to have access to information. Otherwise, you can't work. They're always friendly on the phone, and they're always willing to find solutions together. And we're also supported by this very nice IT system. It's just one login, and you get all the access to the information you need. Your assessment tools, your care plan, your register, your hours, and so everything is in it. And every nurse has their own iPad. So it really, in the other organization, we had 10 different IT systems, and you have to fill in something in this system and there and there and there. But it's just one. Yeah, it all makes sense. So it really cuts down in cost on admin tasks. Where are we? I will move on. Yeah. Okay. So now we started, as already mentioned, one team, just 4 really brave nurses on this new system. And now we're up to more than 900 teams, and they're all over the Netherlands, and more than 10,000 nurses who, along the way, you see a big growth in 2009 and 10, because then it was becoming more known also in the Netherlands, and a lot of unhappy nurses quit their jobs in the organizations and wanted to join Buurtzorg. And now, so I think it's a totally different way of working. Just keep it simple, use your common sense, and try to find the best solutions in every situation, in your team, with your clients, in the back office. So, and it's, I really feel the freedom, and as a nurse, I got my profession back. So that's what I hear amongst my colleagues. Now we are able to really work in the community, because Netherlands, I think the same here in the UK, had a long history of district nursing. So I always say we go back to how it used to be, but in a with new IT system. So it really, works for us in a good way.
Basically, Buurtzorg never has set out to expand internationally. Jos de Blok and his colleagues, it's a social enterprise. They are not motivated by building a global empire, but they are and have responded to increasing international demand to know how this could happen in different countries. And we became involved after I've discovered about Buurtzorg and shared my vision of how we could do things in Britain with Jos, and he asked us to be their partner, and that's what we're now doing. But 2 key things I would take from what Madeleine said, maybe you would take others. One, listening to Madeleine talk about the way in which Buurtzorg caregivers work with their clients to create solutions and really putting the needs of their clients first. That's how the back office of Buurtzorg works in relation to its frontline staff. The mindset of the back of the very small percentage of Buurtzorg employees who are not employed at the front line is, what can I do today to create a better environment for our frontline people to be able to do their jobs properly? Their clients are the frontline nurses, such as at Madeleine. The second thing about it is I think that organisational mindset is aligned very much with the purpose of the frontline caregivers themselves. So we started trying to apply the lessons of this experience and this approach to organisational development in the much troubled health and social care system here in Britain. We're doing it largely at the moment in NHS organisations and in local government, and it is as easy as you would expect it to be. And the sort of the contrast is that the enthusiasm amongst the nurses themselves and amongst other caregivers who want to work in this way is enormous. And we're working with some organizations that are truly committed to innovation, have created an environment in which, in which we can work with them, and are committed to trying to do this, and can quickly grasp many of the principles that is driving this approach. What's proving much harder to do, and I don't think this will surprise you, is developing the mindsets, even amongst the most committed people in these organizations, in the management and leadership of these organizations, the different mindset that is needed to create an organizational environment that is safe and secure for the caregivers at the front line, if those caregivers are going to take more responsibility. Because for me, having started down this road, we're now at the position where we've got 3 teams already up and running, and several more, the yellow ones, likely to be starting quite soon. And we are just launching a Buurtzorg Academy, actually, which is, because we've had so much demand, all these ones in red are organizations that want to work with us, but we frankly haven't had the capacity to support yet. So we just went back to the drawing board a little bit and came up with the idea of a Buurtzorg Academy, and we're going about it in a way that is actually very much aligned, as you would expect, with the Buurtzorg mindset itself, which is that we don't want to go into organizations and do things for them. We want to support organizations to create their own solutions, just like a Buurtzorg nurse co-creates solutions with the people that she looks after. And so that's what we're trying to do with the Buurtzorg Academy. But one of the other purposes of that is that what we've learned along the way is that the caregivers who volunteer to be in the pioneer teams, and they're brave people because it's difficult and it is risky, they need support in their organizations if they're not to be left very vulnerable at the front line. And for us, there's a real duty of care, having created these opportunities, to make sure that we don't leave the nurses exposed. And we had the other day the first meeting of nurses from the 4 teams that have already been set up since this graphic was done. There's another one just in there. And they shared some of their early experiences, and some of those experiences were fantastic. Hearing a nurse talk about how one of the clients that was referred to the team in South London had pretty much chronic leg ulcer problem, which is very common, isn't it? And what was happening is the district nurse was going in there once a week, changing the dressing, coming back a week later, changing the dressing again, very competently. She was doing her job in a competent way and then rushing on to the next client. But what the neighbourhood care nurse in South London was able to do instead was really form a relationship with that client, get talking to some of her family, and work out a way to enable that older woman to start to become a little bit more mobile again and to manage the care together with the professional more effectively. The result was, just in a few weeks, the leg ulcer was clearing up, the pain was going. The nurse felt, at last I'm doing nursing again, and of course financially for the system it means that client can soon be discharged. So instead of an endless visits from district nurses ad infinitum, you'll get instead a shorter period of care, a shorter lifetime of the care relationship, or at least less care needing, less time having to be given to it. And that's been the secret of Buurtzorg's financial success. There are 2 reasons why it's worked financially. Yes, happy clients, of course. Happy staff, yes. But it's not going to take on and get traction unless you also, as we all know, whether we like it or not, can get better financial performance as well. And that's what Buurtzorg's achieved, and they've achieved it essentially in 2 ways. One, by creating this approach to care that trusts the frontline staff to exercise their professionalism, their vocation, their craft, and their common sense together with their clients. And the fact is, if you create an organizational environment in which that's possible, you do not need to tell people what to do. They will know what to do. And the second thing, by doing that, they've been able to enable, if you like it, look at it as a sort of front-loaded care, spending a lot of time in the early period of the relationship to really get to know each other and come up with understand not just the clinical and medical situation, but the social environmental situation too, and come up with solutions. Later on, you don't need so much time. So that's one reason. And of course, when you've got very low overheads, with an organization of now 10,000 in Buurtzorg itself, they've created a few new organizations in different sectors. So now an organization of 14,000 staff with a back office of 50 means that you have very low overheads. So those are the two reasons. And so we're confident that we can achieve the same in the UK, and that's what we're trying to do. And we're doing it in collaboration with Buurtzorg, but we're learning as we go, and our commitment is those organizations or startups, because we're now working with a startup in Cambridgeshire too, that nurses who sadly, actually, it is sad, very experienced district nurses, Queen's nurses, the top of the profession, who've just decided we can't manage to do our jobs in NHS organisations any longer. So they've set up a social enterprise to contract with local GPs to provide a district nursing service. Now, we're supporting them to do that, but we also think it should be possible within public sector organisations to get this kind of change in those as well. So that's what we're trying to do. And if you'd like more information, that's where to find me. Thank you very much.
Ask a question for people to discuss out of this.
Yes, your question. What was it again?
Yeah. Could this be possible in the UK?
Okay.
An enterprise like Buurtzorg?
So could an enterprise like Buurtzorg work in the UK? In your organisation,
Yeah.
possibly?
In
Yeah.
your organisation or... Yeah.
Discuss.
So it's more like the same as knowing the environment, knowing the building up a good relationship and more sometimes an informal relationship with our customers.
How did you go through all of that just to get from there to there and to have all this?
I work for an organisation that kind of concentrates most of its facilities and abilities on helping people live healthy lives in London over the age of 55. So some of those individuals that we have within our accommodation have got Alzheimer's, early onset dementia. And I love what you're doing, and actually I think there's a lot of correlation in terms of where my organisation is going and what we can do. My question to you is, how do you have the element of flexibility, particularly when you're implementing it in the UK, with the requirements of the CQC and the regulator and the regulations that we have to abide by?
Good question, and we don't yet have the final answer, but we're working on it. The conversations we've had with CQC so far, particularly in social care, we haven't yet developed those conversations much in the health part of the CQC, but particularly in social care, which is led in the CQC by somebody who's really committed to getting things right, Andrea Sutcliffe. The conversations we've had there are basically, we're not here to prevent innovation, but we are here to make sure that whatever innovation occurs is done in a safe way and in compliance with safeguards and so on. So we're not experts on that. So what what we are doing is keeping in good touch with them, both at national level and at local level as we work, to try to find solutions so that we match up the needs for self-empowerment of teams with the regulatory requirements. And Buurtzorg essentially had similar challenges. And Buurtzorg really is changing the health and social care system in the Netherlands, and as indeed Jos de Blok set out to do by building from the ground up. But they had similar systemic challenges to 10 years ago to what we've got now. And what they've shown is that if you find solutions to problems, you can not only solve those problems, but you can also highlight how systemically you need to make some changes in order for those solutions to be scaled up and more successful elsewhere. So for instance, we're working with one organisation where as Madeline says, you have to have a framework in a self-organised team, because it's if you like the boundaries of autonomy in relation to the rest of the organisation and its responsibilities. And that's important. How do you arrive at that framework? Well, we think it's best done through dialogue between the organisational leaders and the team itself, and arrive at something. So we're working with one organisation that's got a handbook about that thick. You probably recognise it. Many organisations have handbooks that thick. 1,500 different protocols for how the staff are supposed to work. Of course, nobody ever reads it. My favourite, when I did read it, was the one that told staff how to open a window, because obviously people are too stupid to work that out for themselves. And you can see how that grew up. It grew up because sometime in the midst of time, somebody opened the window badly, had an accident, health and safety, better have a rule about that. So what we decided to do was, well, do we cross out all these things, or do we start with a blank sheet of paper and figure out what you actually need? And some of those things you need, whether we like it or not, are to do with CQC and other regulatory compliance. And the trick there is to turn that into, as simple as possible, a part of the framework for the self-organised team, so that the team itself doesn't have to worry about it, but the framework within which they work gives comfort to the regulator, as well as being very clear to the team. So it's if you like, a rule for the team within which they can function. Keeping it as simple as possible seems to be the trick.
One more question. One more question. Anybody got one? Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to ask to Madeline.
Yeah.
First of all, it's amazing how you explained about the self-organized and self-managed teams. And my question is, how do you manage, or how do you sustain, or do you keep the sustainability within the team management, which self-recruiting team, yes, but it's always difficult to say goodbye. So how do you manage to keep a fully good working supporting team of 10 nurses and for long years? So it's quite challenging. And how do you maintain it?
Yeah, we have also in this framework we have a structure how we set up meetings. So when you start working for Buurtzorg, I only had one training, and that was about a solution-driven method of interaction. It's a nice word, but that helps you to set up a meeting in a right way. And we try to have an open culture in our team. So yeah, when there's something bothering you, please try to speak up in an early stage, because otherwise it will become a big thing. So, but it's when I started within Buurtzorg, that was, I think, the most difficult part. I knew about nursing and I knew about the client, so that's what done easily. But really work in a team, it asks a lot. And I think as a nurse, you have to walk the extra mile. I heard it in another presentation as well. But yeah, we feel it in our as nurses in our team. We feel it's our own enterprise. So they're all 900 different small enterprise, and we feel very responsible. And it's also yeah, you have to like your colleagues or live with each other. You don't have to be friends with all of them, but you have to like each other and really want to. Yeah, the willingness to give in. Okay, it's yours for the team benefit. It's good to have this solution, and be flexible. Don't always want to make your point because you think it's the best option. But yeah, be open, be transparent, but it will ask. It will. You have to work on it as a team. So yeah.
And Madeline, what was it that training which taught you how to do Buurtzorg style meetings? What was it that you learned in that?
That you're not, when there's a problem, you can go over it from all the sides and go over and talk with your colleagues for hours. But it's about solution. It's just a solution-driven method. Just always look for solutions. Okay, this happened. It's good to talk a little bit about it, but then go on. Always want to move forward. And it's the same with your clients. Always, find solutions. Move on. And in our team, to make a decision within consensus with 10 women, it's not always that easy. And then we make a decision, a temporary decision. That's what we learned also in this training. Make a temporary decision and then there will be another one. So, yeah, then you move forward. Otherwise, you get stuck in decision making. Yeah.
Can I just add one point there, because it's a very interesting story coming out of the work we've already done in Britain, which is that where we give this training to the initial teams that we've started in this country, and it's amazing how quickly people take to this methodology. It's not a lot, it's basically 2 to 3 days is all that's needed to get cracking. And one of the most interesting things about it is that the teams form their own agenda. Anybody can suggest an agenda item, a matter for decision or a matter for information or various others. And then each member, whoever suggests it, gets to say how long they think it will take. So in the first meeting that I facilitated for a new team, they all made their suggestions for what needed to be on the agenda, and we'd agreed in advance that the team meeting would last for 2 hours, and everybody said how long they thought their item would need, and it came to 5 hours. So then there was a process of decision making about, okay, are there some of these matters that actually don't need to be decided right now? We could decide them later. Are there some matters that we're exaggerating how long they'll need? If we're a bit more brisk, maybe we can get there quicker. And we got it down to the 2 hours. And by the end of that 2 hours, firstly, there was no overrun. Everything happened within that 2 hours. All the decisions that had to be taken that day were taken. But even better, the decisions that they took was who was going to take turns at the first rotation of the tasks that are shared out amongst the teams. And that included who was going to chair the meetings for the first 6 months of the team's existence. And by the end of that session, the chair that had been nominated, I transferred responsibility to her, because they could see how working together in a way that is focused on solutions and negotiates decisions really could work. And the Buurtzorg approach to consensus is something I've really taken to, because it's not the approach that says consensus is if everybody in the room is 100% delighted with the decision. Consensus is when everybody in the room can live with the decision and try it out. So you're not convinced, okay, but are you really against it in principle? No, don't think it'll work. Let's give it a shot. So after maybe you try it for 3 months, learn, maybe it does work, maybe it doesn't work, and you move on. But if you totally think it's against the values, that's a different matter. Then you won't accept it and the team won't do it. I thought that approach to consensus is really action-orientated, enables things to get done, but also means you don't have division between a majority and a minority.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that was amazing.